You've probably seen this one around, right? On a t-shirt, maybe in a meme, or dropped as a mind-blowing science fact at a party. It's one of those claims that sounds so bizarre, you just kind of have to believe it. Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers on this classic viral fact.
I mean, this statement is just everywhere. It's become the go-to piece of trivia to make a point about how weirdly connected all life on Earth is. You see it on Twitter accounts with millions of followers. You hear it in conversation. It's just sort of seeped into our collective pop science brain. But you know how we do things here? We have to ask the big question. Is it actually true? Does this fun fact that everyone shares actually stand up to, science? Okay. Let's dive into this, because the real story is, believe it or not, even more interesting than the myth itself.
So to really get to the bottom of this, we first have to get our language straight. The whole mystery, the whole confusion, it all hinges on the difference between two words that people use interchangeably all the time, but they mean totally different things: DNA and genes.
Okay, so think of your DNA as the entire unabridged instruction manual for you. It is the complete blueprint for building and running a human being. And it is absolutely massive. We're talking a sequence of over 3 billion chemical letters.
Now a gene, that's just one tiny piece of that giant manual. If DNA is the enormous cookbook, a gene is like a single recipe. It's a specific chunk of DNA that tells a cell how to build one specific protein, and that protein then goes off and does a specific job, like helping digest your food or building an eyeball.
And the difference in scale here is just staggering. Get this, the human genome has over 3 billion of those DNA base pairs, but only around 20,000 of those are the actual protein-coding genes. That means the genes themselves, the recipes, make up less than 2% of your total DNA. And that distinction is the absolute key to cracking this whole banana mystery.
All right, so now that we've got our definitions straight, we can finally look at the real numbers. Let's see what happens when we apply this new understanding to that viral claim.
So, that 50% claim, if we take it literally that we share half of our entire DNA sequence with a banana, then that statement is just completely, totally, 100% false. It's not even in the right ballpark. In fact, the banana genome is way smaller than ours, so it wouldn't even be mathematically possible.
So where on earth did this idea even come from? Well, it looks like it all started around 2001, from a discussion on a PBS program about the Human Genome Project. But here's the kicker. They were talking about sharing genes, not DNA. It was basically a simple mix-up that just took on a life of its own and went viral.
Okay, so if they really meant genes, is the 50% number correct then? Well, not really. Modern analysis, where scientists compare our genes to their counterparts in bananas, they call these orthologs, they find the number is actually closer to 25%. So here's the crucial point. Even what they meant to say was a pretty big overstatement.
And just to put a final nail in the coffin, if we go back to that original claim about sharing total DNA, the actual letter-for-letter identical sequence between you and a banana is tiny. We're talking well below 1%. So yeah, whether you're talking genes or DNA, that 50% number is officially busted.
But wait, this isn't just about knocking down a myth, because the truth that's hiding inside that myth is actually way more profound. The fact that we share any genes at all with a banana, well, that tells a really incredible story about where all of us came from.
I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? We're an animal, it's a plant. We're in completely different biological kingdoms, so why would there be any genetic overlap at all? Well, the answer takes us on a trip way, way back in time. Billions of years back.
Everyone, I'd like you to meet Luca. That stands for the last universal common ancestor. This is the single-celled organism, or maybe a whole population of them, that lived about 4 billion years ago. And it's the great, add a few million more greats, grandparent of every single living thing on this planet. You, me, that bird outside your window, and yep, that banana in your kitchen.
And this timeline just really puts it all into perspective. It's wild. So you can see all life kicks off from Luca, way back here. Then, around 2 billion years ago, you get the evolution of eukaryotic cells. That's the complex kind of cell we have and that plants have. But the key moment for our story is right here, about 1.6 billion years ago. That's the Great Split. That's when the ancestors of plants and the ancestors of animals said goodbye and went their separate ways.
So the genes we actually share with bananas are these super ancient ones that we both inherited from that shared ancestor. These aren't the genes for making things like fingers or banana peels. No, they're the fundamental housekeeping genes. They handle the most basic, essential jobs for any complex cell. Things like cell division, copying DNA, and basic metabolism. As one person on Reddit put it perfectly, evolution's motto for these genes was basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And check this out. This is a fantastic analogy I found that just nails the concept. Think about it. Humans and bananas are like two totally different pieces of software. We're like Excel, and a banana is like Call of Duty. They do completely different things, but they both have to run on the same operating system, right? Our shared genes are like that base code, the absolute essential stuff that any complex cell needs just to function.
So for this last part, let's zoom all the way out and see how this very specific connection to a piece of fruit fits into the bigger, absolutely incredible family tree of life.
You know, seeing the numbers all lined up like this really helps. Unsurprisingly, we share a counterpart for about 99% of our genes with a chimp, our closest cousin. Okay, about 90% with a cat. Makes sense. But look at this. We share about 60% of our genes with a fruit fly because so many of those basic how to build a body genes have been saved over time. And then way down at the bottom, there's our friend the banana, showing us that while our genetic connection is totally real and ancient, it's also very, very distant.
And this really brings us all the way back to the beginning. That viral fact, even though it's wrong on the numbers, it taps into this really human feeling of wonder. The person who started the discussion that inspired a lot of this explainer, they said it perfectly. There's just something cool about being able to look at a plant and think, hey, you're like me.
So the next time you see that meme, you'll know the 50% is wrong, but the spirit of it, that's pointing at something truly amazing. The yeast that makes your bread rise, the mushrooms on your pizza, the grass in the park, they're all your distant cousins. Which leaves you with one final thought to chew on. What other ancient relatives, what other incredible stories about life's shared past are hiding all around us, just in plain sight?